the way a fish looks like, and then 2 legs. A fish is a fish. Guys, how people learn. If you just Google how people learn and all that, you'll see those misconceptions. So as a teacher, you want to capture those misconceptions. Use assessment to capture those misconceptions. Because of the prior knowledge, kids already come into class with what? Misconceptions, some understandings, that probably are correct, probably not. So you want to get a baseline of where folks are. Capture misconceptions. So assessment for learning, so that you can be able to start teaching. Questions for me, please. All right, assessment is learning. This one, again, just involves students monitoring their own learning and using feedback. So I don't know if you guys get to do that. Do you guys get an opportunity to monitor your own learning? How do you monitor your own learning? Anybody? Yes, sir?
Maybe before an exam, you take practice exams to see how you're doing.
That's one way of doing it.
Your GPA?
Your GPA? That can be messy sometimes. Any other thoughts? So let's talk about, yes?
Just like how you're understanding the homework in the class.
How you're understanding the homework in the class, so probably taking some exams or practice questions, right? Let me switch gears a little bit and ask about, I'm going to throw some stuff here. EPICS, for example, because I like building stuff. So when you guys have a problem to solve, so I'm from Africa, so let's talk about clean water, some design challenges that you face. How will you monitor that product that you're designing at that point in time? Are there some key assessment strategies that you might utilize from a design perspective to think about if this product is really going to meet the design challenge that I have, the need that I have? I know I'm switching from elementary and middle and high school, but also if you think about it at the elementary level, middle level, and high school level, if you took PLTW classes, you did projects, right? So from a project-based learning perspective, what kind of things might you get to do to make sure that your product is actually meeting the needs of the designer, the needs of the folks? You keep on answering questions. I want somebody else. Okay, I'm going to let you answer that. Okay.
Maybe like quantifying your problems for like that example. Maybe transportation of high volumes of water. How are you going to get that across continents? That's one of the problems. And you could just kind of start listing them out and see what you can do for each individual problem.
So you quantify those. Yes?
If you had like a set design you wanted to do, you could maybe model that design and see how well it would produce.
Modeling, right? You can 3D print it, right? Prototyping, huh?
Make sure there's funding for the design. Might be the best idea in the world, but if you can't get it off the ground, it's going nowhere.
So maybe you can also go to Kickstarter, right? And put it out there. You guys know about Kickstarter?
Buy a lotto ticket.
Right, yep, So there's certain key things that you can be able to do, right? So that you can be able to gauge if your idea or your learning progression is making sense, or you can sort of like gauge yourself. All right? Let me continue. I don't want to run out of time here. Assessment of learning. So this one, just a continuation of what we were talking about. One of the key things that I also want to talk about is used to plan future learning goals. Remember, this is a formative thing, assessment of learning. So it's more formative. So future planning goals, as a teacher, you also want to use assessment to be able to plan your teaching. So for example, I've been teaching for a long time. I've been teaching for the last, since 1999 I've been teaching. So how many years are those? Almost 19 years, right? I've been teaching since 1990. So I taught high school, and then I taught at community college, and then went back to school, did a PhD, and then transitioned to higher education. But all through, what I've always done to make my life easier is with electronic media right now, after each and every assessment, you guys do ICE evaluations, right? I also do my own assessment in class, collect data and all that. After each and every evaluation, to make my life a little bit easier, I have my lesson plans for all the classes that I teach. What I did last year will be totally different from this year. Chances are, if I was going to give this talk again, it's going to be totally different from the way folks are behaving right now, of like, okay, some folks are not really engaged, so what can I do to make them engaged? Those kind of things, So for me, what's going to happen is that I'm going to use this assessment piece just from my own cues and all that, go back and try to do what? Plan for future learning goals. What are some of the key things I'd like to achieve? So I can be able to capture the audience, each and every person. So that this side of the room can be able to say something, All right, let's continue. So formative and summative assessment. You guys know what formative assessment is, right? And summative assessment. Okay, I'm going to now do this. 1, 2. Whew. You guys know what formative assessment is?
We do now.
Okay, formative assessment. Can somebody give me an example of formative assessment? Yes.
Like at the end of a class, a teacher could ask students to write down questions that they still have after the lesson so that if there's anything that they're still confused about, next time they can clarify it before they move on.
Yep, at the end of the class, you can have exit sleeps.
So we took a class, Chem 116, and you start with like a performance evaluation at the end, and then the final is very similar. And we did worse on the final than the one at the beginning of the semester.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, but that's a formative assessment. Very good.
Yeah, it was an assessment.
Yes?
Some classes use eye clickers.
Eye clickers, right.
To measure what the class thinks during the class.
Especially in those big lecture halls. Very good. Somebody had a hand over here. See a hand over here? Hot seat, right, that's another one. Very good, very good, very good. So you have an idea of some formative assessment. So at the middle school, elementary school, or high school, what kind of assessments do you guys use then? You guys recall that? I know it's a while, right? Yes.
In my chemistry class, we had exit slips like you talked about.
Exit slips, Do the teachers ask any questions and you guys,
The teachers would ask questions, and then there'd be the kids with no clue what was going on. It'd be the two kids who always answer all the questions. And then
Oh, the two kids? Okay. So, very good. So teachers use actually questions in class. They are called informal formative. It's kind of like just informal per se, just ask questions and all. So it's sort of like informal in nature. Any other suggestions about formative assessment from high school or, okay. All right, let's move forward. Summative assessment, provide evidence of student achievement for the purpose of making a judgment about student competency or program effectiveness. So at the end of the semester, your competency, probably it's going to be narrowed down to an A grade or a B grade, and then, oh, maybe this program is not really meeting its objectives, those kind of things. So it's a summative all over. So go ahead.
So would those be like ABET outcomes?
Kinder. So for program effectiveness? Yes. So probably that's going to be over 5-year period. So ABET will come and get to, conduct maybe a study, an evaluation or a study, an evaluation of what's really going on in the program. And they will ask students questions, they will look at faculty and all those kind of things. So it's a summative kind of thing from that perspective. Yeah. So as you can get to see, it's not necessarily at elementary or middle school or high level. The assessment is all over. Okay. All right. Before I run out of time, it's 5:10. Okay. So we just talked about that. I had that down as examples of those. So the two scenarios. How will you then assess those two scenarios that we just talked about? We talked about a couple of things, right? You guys remember those two scenarios that I gave you at the beginning of the lesson? So now we are back at square one. So we are closing the lesson. So how will you then assess those two scenarios? Let me go back to those two scenarios. Okay, you can tell that I'm not really good when it comes to this. Okay, so scenario number one, scenario number two. We just talked about assessment for learning, assessment as learning, assessment of learning. We talked about formative assessment. We talked about objectives, writing objectives and all that. So going back to these two scenarios, we have scenario number one and scenario number two. whereby you have this is just an open example, and your task is to design a tent like the one in the picture. It must be big enough for 2 adults to sleep. Draw a diagram to show how you will cut the material to make the tent. That's all the information you have as a student. And the second one is your task is to design a tent like the one in the picture. Your design must satisfy these conditions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have some criteria that you have to need. So if you are a teacher, elementary, middle, or high school, choose a grade. Think about learning progressions that you did last time. Think about, I know probably you don't have those here, but think about standards and NGSS standards or Indiana Department of Education standards. Think about a subject. Maybe this might be, since I'm an engineering technology person, so this might be your PLTW class, for example. So or probably even, are you in English? Education?
We're both special education.
Special education. Okay, so something in special education. Think about it and connect it back to technology education or something, engineering design. So how will you assess those? Can we take 3 minutes to think about how we might assess and then just share and then wrap up? Because it's almost 5:20, right? It's 5:12, so I have 8 minutes remaining. So this is scenario number 2, and then scenario number 1 is more of an open-ended example right there. How will you then assess those? Because you guys get open-ended questions, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you get questions that have sort of like structured, right? So how will you end up assessing those?
You gonna give us 3 minutes, or we're ready to rock now?
Are you guys ready?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Really?
I think this side should crank some out.
I'm going to give you 3 minutes. So it's now 5:13. Let's get back at around 5:16. So 4 minutes to wrap up. So let's think about it. How will you? I want to hear your thoughts.
We need 2 different scenarios, right? One for the first one for the second one?
Yeah, you can choose either.
Okay.
Yeah, you can choose either, whichever you feel that you want to talk about. And just make sure that before you leave, get the sign-up sheet. Thank you. And make sure I have your name on here. I'm going to pass this over to the people who sent me to come here. Okay, 2 minutes. Kind of like keep my time. And the many other examples I'll have thrown up there, like designing an air blaster car. How will you, assess that? So many examples out there. I just decided to pick this. Or designing a playground, a swing in a playground, But the key question is, okay, you have all these scenarios, but how will you assess? Even just for you, when it comes to reflection, how will you assess those? We ready?
Always.
5:16. Very good. Very good. So, side of the group, class, any idea of any suggestions, either scenario that you might want to pick? How will you assess? Yes, sir.
So for the first one, I think, well, I'm just going to compare the two.
Okay. Absolutely.
For the first one, I would be more have an emphasis on creativity and efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Since it's not really a process, and it's not a list of criteria you have to meet. So it's more open-ended. So that's what I would do for that one. But for the second one, it's more of documentation. This is the idea you went through this process you went through, and you completed all these tasks.
So you'll probably have a holistic scoring for the first one. And then for the second one, you'll have probably a profile kind of thing, documentation. Very good, very good. Good. Uh-huh. Go ahead.
Assess it a bit differently. I would give 2 people who are not familiar with camping or tents. This might be a little difficult to find and then give them all the material, give them the instructions, and give them those list of things to do. See if they can move around while kneeling down inside the tent. See if they can complete all those exercises. And if they can, it passes and we're good to go.
That's a good way of looking at it too. You know,
Save paper, you don't need to be printing out evaluations. Environmentally friendly.
it's true, but from a realistic perspective, in a classroom environment,
So we can move the desk.
you know, but that's true. Probably if you want to do it large scale, that might be a way of looking at it. Any other thoughts? Yes.
I feel like for the first one, you only have the one criteria, but the other things would probably be important. So you want to see if they thought about the other things as well.
Yep. But again, as a teacher, you know, as you said, you want them to think through, which is a really good thing. But also, depending on the grade level, you might probably want to help them, you know, direct them and all that. I was hoping to hear that you guys will also talk about some kind of documentation. And you know, you want to see probably engineering design documentation because you guys are engineers to be and all that. So I was expecting to hear that. But that note, let me share something that I wanted to share really quickly before I wrap up. This is the way, just an example. This is an example of how you might probably get to examine, you know, that. You know, whereby, you know, going back to what you did say, you know, you have a profile, a document. So for this is for that tent number 2, and go back to tent number 1, which is holistic in a sense, okay? So you look at problem solving, number and quantity, you know, and then the geometry, you know, suitable height, breadth, kneeling height of person, like what you said, can they go in and all that? But again, you can go back to the modeling piece if you use Inventor or Fusion 360 just to model the whole thing and up to scale and document those kind of things. So my point is assessment is challenging to do, but if you understand the key goal of why you're assessing, is it assessment for learning, off learning, or as learning, then you're in a better position to be able to attain, you know, you as a teacher or as an evaluator or as a student, you're able to attain those goals that you want to attain or achieve. Okay? Any questions as I wrap up? Just 1 minute remaining. Okay then. Guys are so quiet. Well, if you have any other questions about assessment, I don't consider myself being an expert, but my research is around assessment and evaluation in iSTEM integrated STEM environments whereby you have the blending of STEM fields. So that's what I do and education stuff. So if you have any questions, that's my email address. Shoot me an email. Hopefully I'll be able to answer. All right? Okay. Talk to you later. Thank you.